Hello and welcome to another United Way Partner Spotlight. Today we're sitting down with Donna and Maggie from Family Promise. How are you doing today, ladies?
Great, thank
Very
you.
well.
So tell me about Family Promise.
Well, Family Promise began when Karen Olson in 1981 was rushing to a business meeting in near Grand Central Station. She noticed that there were homeless people on the street, and she stopped and she offered a lady a sandwich. But what she learned is that this lady needed more than a sandwich.
Oh, sure.
She wanted her time. She wanted to be heard. So Karen stayed with Millie, was her name, and they spoke for quite a while that afternoon. And that started turning something in Karen's heart, where she realized that something was needed to help families and help homeless other than just food. So the National started in 1981 with Karen and her sons handing out sandwiches in Grand Central Station. Every Saturday, they would go down to Grand Central Station, they'd make a bunch of sandwiches in the morning, and they'd take and they'd distribute them, and they'd talk to people and listen to their stories.
Okay. And that was Grand Central Station in New York, so eventually it worked its way out to Helena. How did that happen?
Well, it didn't happen right away.
Sure.
In 1986, Karen, who actually lived in New Jersey, started a network of people who needed things and people who had time and energy to give, and developed a network and used the YMCA for housing and some churches, and they did a kind of people-to-people thing there. And it initially was called the Interfaith Hospitality Network, but it grew and changed its name to Family Promise, and now it's in 42 states, including Montana. And there are 5 affiliates in Montana, including Helena. And it started in Helena in 2011, roughly, with a nidus of people who were interested in helping, and it had morphed into being for homeless families with children, because there were other groups who could help homeless adults, but helping homeless families with children is a lot different in many ways, and children being so vulnerable. So it came here in 2011, and several churches, now there are about a dozen churches plus Carroll College, are part of Family Promise in Greater Helena.
That's quite the network. And
Yeah.
what services are they providing?
Well, housing, of course.
Okay.
And pre-COVID, the families were rotating from church to church a week at a time. Since COVID, they've mostly been at First Christian Church on Power Street.
Okay.
Some of the churches are now starting to have them back in their own facility. So that's the night sleeping. And at the day center, they have their daytime activities. If they're not at work or at school, they can write a resume. They get training for parenting training, CV training. They work with some of the different agencies in town, and that's where they are physically, if they're not at school or at church or at work.
And so that's where they actually sleep, is right there in the churches?
They sleep in the churches. And then volunteers from the different churches host. So there are 2 sleepover hosts every night, 365 nights a year. And there are people who provide food. We used to have supper hosting at suppers at the churches. Right now they're eating all in the day center. But people who bring food, who buy groceries, and then there are staff members and a board of directors who, make things work.
And you also have a prevention and diversion program. How does that work?
We do. We have the educational support where parenting skills, resume writing that Maggie's mentioned, money management, other classes for the families to learn and develop and grow skills that will help them with sustainable independence. We have direct support. We're up to 4 families at a time, stay in the church buildings or at First Christian. And what does that look like for our families? They're able to save money. They're able to develop skills. They're able to get better jobs or get employment. And while they are in the program, they don't have to worry about food and shelter and paying those expenses, that they're able to focus on other things. But our prevention and diversion program, with COVID, we recognized there was a need. It was a lot more advantageous to try to keep the families from becoming homeless rather than taking care of them after. So in the prevention and diversion program, we may help with rent, we may help with other things. One gentleman we were able to, he had recently gotten a better job, but it was in Townsend. He had only budgeted money for gas for Helena commuting, not to Townsend. So we gave him some extra funds to help him get gas till he got his first paycheck and be able to stay in the place he was living. So it makes a lot of difference that way. Help with rent or expenses with a vehicle, help with fuel, things of that nature, groceries, help people find a different job. A lot of, as you know, with COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs. There was a lot of people work in the restaurant industry, and there weren't a lot of people going out to eat. A lot of restaurants were closed. So we've been able to help assist families as needed during those trying times. So with that, we help with rent, and we help that gentleman, and just prevention and diversion gives us the flexibility while they're not staying with us to provide the educational support, to provide the backup and services where they meet with our family advocate. She helps them navigate anything they may need. It just helps offer them a line of support and guidance during troubling times.
Well, that's awesome, because I mean, I know from my personal experience, it seems like there's always just that one thing. You've got everything under control, it feels like, but there's that one thing that trips you up. And it causes everything else to unravel. And the fact that you can step in, like with the gentleman that was working in Townsend, that was that one thing.
Yeah, it was the one thing, and it made a difference for him.
But it made a huge difference, because otherwise it would have filtered back, and he probably wouldn't have been able to get to work after a point. And
yes, it certainly has made a big difference to our to families' lives. And when they're in the program, we're in the business of transforming lives, helping families that are experiencing homelessness, or hopefully preventing them from becoming homeless, because every child deserves a home. And as Maggie mentioned, that we're focused on families with children, and we have a unique opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. And there's a few people I'd like to share with you about that come to mind when we think about making a difference. One lady was in our program. She was a very timid and shy young lady. She had 2 young daughters. With the encouragement of people walking beside her on her journey, helping her, giving her an encouraging word, she chose to go to Helena College. And for her senior project, she wanted to give back to Family Promise, because she was graduating. She was looking forward to having a sustainable job, where she was actually looking at purchasing her own home for her and her girls. And she wanted to give back to Family Promise for her senior project. She raised funds and got a group of other students at Helena College to help build the play area at Family Promise. And I think you had an example you wanted to share too, right, Maggie?
Well, it seems like there are a lot of them. But the family that I remember was a family who got the first Habitat house.
Okay.
And Family Promise worked with them a long time. They had a lot of kids. And I think 2 of the kids were foster kids, so they couldn't just be in a small apartment. And they were able to get the first Habitat house, and subsequently there have been some other Habitat houses that have gone to Family Promise families. And some of the families go to, there are different lists in town. So the family advocate for Family Promise helps people get on the Helena Housing Authority list and this other list, and there are waiting lists. You know that affordable housing is quite limited in this area. So there are different agencies that try to help do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things I think about the United Way and all of our partners that we have, the 36 agencies that are all constantly working together so that people don't get lost through in the gaps that form, or or the dauntingness of trying to figure out which of these 36 agencies is who's going to help me best, because there's a lot of agencies that have somewhat parallel missions.
Yeah.
And knowing, okay, but which one is for me, and that they're all working together rather than where I've seen in other situations in other towns where it's like they all seem to be trying to function in a bubble, and if you go to the wrong agency, they can't really seem to guide you to the right one.
It's so huge knowing about that. And our family advocate and our director both are great at helping people navigate the system. And one thing that I've been told by them, that through COVID, it seems like the agencies, it's almost brought the agencies to work together better.
Okay.
And to be more stronger together, where it's not uncommon at all that they'll get a call saying, okay, we have this homeless person, we can afford 1 hotel night, and we can chime in and say, okay, we can afford 2 more, and then somebody else might be able to afford 1 more, and get them to where they're getting into the house to help them so that they're not on the street, that they're not in the van, living at the fairgrounds, and trying to navigate that. And it's really opened my eyes to know that there really are a lot of people in the community that you don't recognize as being homeless. One thing when we have dinner hosts come in, one family that always brought, it was the family came with their children, and they would play games and help the kids with homework after dinner. And I remember hearing one of the teenagers after, when they were leaving that night, say, I didn't realize they were homeless. They're in my school. And they had been actually living in their car. So there's a huge need for us as a community to work together to offer support, to make a difference in someone's life. And it doesn't mean that we have to be smart or rich or beautiful or perfect. It just means we have to care. And how can we care? We can come together to transform lives, where we walk beside our guests, we offer a helping hand, a word of encouragement, a home-cooked meal, a friendly voice, and a listening ear. Those are all things we can do to help our people around us. And how do we learn more? How can others get involved? We have some goals to expand our name recognition, to build our social media presence, to expand the day center. We have a little teeny house.
Teeny
house.
weeny house.
That I don't know how the architect did it. He did an amazing job of creating 2 offices and then a play area for children, an area where the families can work on the resumes, and then a kitchen area and
2 bathrooms.
2 bathrooms.
One of which is handicapped.
Yeah.
So
Which
we
is
can take handicap. We've had people who can't do stairs, say,
yes.
and we have a handicap bathroom and a regular bathroom and laundry.
Yeah, and they do their laundry there. They get their meals.
But
it's tiny. And when you have 3 or 4 families on top of each other in it, it's really
It's tiny.
really
Yeah,
tiny.
It's tiny.
So our hopes are to expand.
Sure.
To look at maybe getting a different day center or building on to our current day center. We're also hoping to raise funds to allow for an additional staff. Right now we have 1 and about a 3/4 staff. So we're hoping to be able to expand that. But as you know, everything, as with the United Way, our conversation earlier, there's only limited funds. So we're looking at that because our staff works so hard, and it's not uncommon for them to get 10, 15 calls a day from people needing help navigating the system. But we're so grateful for our partners. St. Peter's Health recently gave us a donation. Carroll College, the Hoops for Homeless, they gave us a check with Ascent Bank. Ascent Bank gave us the check for $4,000.
That's
great,
awesome.
It's a great help. And so if people out there want to help, how can they do that? They can go online to familypromisehelena.org. They can call the Day Center at 465-9467. They can send us a message through Facebook. They're welcome to call me directly at 439-6811 or call Maggie directly.
At 465-0707.
But it's with the other organizations that we work to assist people, and we welcome any and all help we can get.
Oh, sure.
Buying groceries, making meals, spending the night. And spending the night, Maggie, let's talk about that.
Spending the night. Yeah, so
Lots of opportunities for people to support.
yeah, 14 slots every week, so 14 times 52 weeks. So one of the churches has to provide overnight hosts, and I have to say that coordinating for St. Peter's Cathedral and being an overnight host, I have gotten to know people so much better, not only from my church, but some of the partner churches, because we help one another out. It's not just one church every week. Like if one church is responsible for 14 overnight slots, we might have 2 or 3 or 4 people from other churches, and we get to know other people in the community, which is a real, I think, a community building experience and personal building, because we're with others who care about families, and we learn things from them. And it's fun too.
It's great fun. If you have a girlfriend or a friend that you don't ever get to connect with, you can raise your hand and volunteer, and you guys could be the overnight hosts, and you stay in separate rooms at First Christian. It's socially distanced, but there's a couch and chair area where you can go and visit, and you can learn from each other and get caught up while helping families and making a difference. It's incredible to see the families grow. I remember one time I was in Costco. I heard all this noise running, these little feet running down behind me, and I look around, and it was one of the families we had, and the kids were running towards me. They wanted to give me a hug because they had remembered me from the program. And it's very heartwarming to see them grow. And one family that recently graduated, I took a quilt from one of our volunteers. She made it, and the family had been a bit reserved in the program because it's not always comfortable to have, you know, be around people. They were in their own space and they were so comfortable and they were so just friendly and chatty and, you know, sharing their life, and ever so grateful for all Family Promise has done.
Well, that's awesome, and that sense of community that you all are building. Well, thank you ladies so much for joining us today.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
And thank you as well. We look forward to seeing you next time for another United Way Partner Spotlight. Goodbye.